I had not thought of CAT as an option in my first couple of years in IIT Indore. It basically felt like a handicap being in electrical and trying to crack CS.
What are your top three recommendations for movies
Oh no,
or TV
no,
shows?
don't do this to me. They change every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Alum Talks podcast. This is our fourth episode, and we are super excited to have Ashish Amitabh Bharatwal with us today. Ashish is one of the most accomplished alums of IIT Indore. Currently, he is as principal at BCG, but as he graduated from IIT Indore in 2017, doing electrical engineering, he then transitioned to IIM Ahmedabad for his MBA. In this episode, we will be covering all these stories that happened in Ashish's life between his different milestones and also all the different places or events that helped him to be where he is today. So, Ashish, thank you firstly so much for taking the time out to chat with us and also all the people watching this.
Thanks, Nemath. Thanks, Shubh. First of all, Happy New Year. We are recording this on 2nd of Jan 2025. And this is great to be doing this as the first thing in this new year. Uh, and really appreciate this initiative, Nemath and Shubh, because I think IIT Indore, despite all the great talent that we have been attracting over the years, there is still a lot of stuff that goes unspoken, and a lot of questions that remain unanswered when it comes to the non-core side of things. So very happy to be here and unwrap that to the extent possible. And Nemath and Shuk, thanks for the kind words.
Thanks.
We are very happy to have you. So let's start with one thing that is very close to all three of us, of course, IIT Indore. So when I was thinking about my IIT decision, one of the things that was very critical for me was whether we have a permanent campus or not. And the thing with your batch, Ashish, I think, was that you didn't have your permanent stay inside the campus,
Yeah.
and you people had to travel daily from Silver Springs. So what was that experience like? Did it affect your campus experience a lot?
It was fantastic, I have to say. So we were living in like I don't know what grades there are, but it was a super deluxe um, planned society, and we were living with the residents there. Uh, I loved every minute of Silver Springs, honestly. I know the bus travel was a bit painful, but it was still manageable.
Heard crazy stories about Silver Springs, but I think that's for another day. One of the other things that we really wanted to ask you was how did you think about your 4 years of IIT Indore when you just went in? So imagine Ashish in his first year. What were you thinking? What outcomes did you wanted to achieve? And how did you envision these 4 years?
Um, what I remember very distinctly is the valedictorian speech or whatever speech there was, where a few of the graduating students would, talk about uh, their experience. I was one of those. So I remember a quote that I used by BJ Neblet, which said, you are the sum focus of all of your experiences. While looking back, I think that there is a lot more that makes you up beyond your experiences. But I feel that IIT Indore was very very critical and core to my being in 2017 when I graduated. So when I came into IIT Indore, I had no idea what I was going to do. My aim was to first of all go from electrical to CS. Uh, you know, branch change, and I think one of the earlier guests was able to do it successfully, but I could not. So when that did not work out, then I tried my hand at elections. That also did not work out. And then I realized, close to the third year, that need to get something concrete out of this experience. And the best thing about IT Indore was how motivated and how brilliant the people around me were. I was constantly inspired by all of my friends, and it was a very small batch, 120 people. I knew the names and roll numbers of everyone, and where they lived, right? Also because I canvassed for myself. So I really liked the fact that everyone was committed to doing something great about their career, at least, and that really lit up a fire inside me. And so, just looking back, year one, I think June 2013, Ashish versus April 2017, Ashish. I think that made all the difference. I was much more motivated. I knew where I was going. I knew what I wanted to do. I had very strong friendships, and just a general appreciation of what a great institute like IIT Indore does to your mindset and your and just your overall career.
I think I totally echo the point about having a small family, because even when Namath and I were there, I think we were around 240 people living very close to each other, seeing almost everyone daily, everyone living in the same hostel building. So you do get to build those close relationships quite easily as compared to, let's say, older IITs where you have people in multiple hostels spread across very far. So totally get that. And just further going on to your journey, so in hindsight, it does feel like a perfectly crafted profile for a top tier MBA, right? You had good grades, you had amazing PORs, you interned at Reliance in a strategy role, which is not very typical that you get to see from IIT Indore. And then you must have nailed your CAT exam as well. So just wanted to understand, was it like a well-charted plan that you laid out for yourselves, let's say in second year or third year? And did you have someone who mentored you all along as to what you should do, what you should not do?
Yeah, so great question, and I think it is a very important question for the audience, the intended audience of this podcast. See, I would like to break it down into three parts. There is the academics, which is the most important, cannot be let go of. Then there is the extracurricular activities or the co-curricular activities, where I would put the PORs in. And then there is the professional experience that you can get in terms of internships. So, talking about ACADS first, I knew from the very beginning that ACADS is going to be super important wherever I go, because everyone here is here because of ACADS, and you have to do really well. So, thankfully, it wasn't that difficult to at least find the motivation, because everyone around me was studying all the time. And if not studying, then they were doing something about getting better at some very core skills like programming. I could see people from my batch in the top 100 at hacker and code forces, etc. So you were always on the edge. It was just about sticking to it, just having the discipline of going to the classes. At least I think 8.5 is manageable by just going to the classes, and then it's a bit more about being in the moment when the professor is explaining something and preparing for the exams. But ACADS, I think, is something that I was committed to since the very beginning, and thanks to the people around me also, it was not very difficult to manage. Now, come the PORs. Honestly, I had not thought of CAT as an option in my first couple of years in IIT Indore. But when I got exposed to these things, it was quite late. Like in third year, I realized, okay, there is something called CAT. All the lit club and quizzing club folks are going to time coaching in Zanjeerwala Square and so on. And but all of that came later. The decision for going for PORs was more about, let me get the most out of my experience in IIT Indore. I did find out, in the first couple of years, that people who had PORs were people whom I really admired. For example, my senior Kartikeya Upasni, I really liked him. The way he thought about things, the way he was fully aware of what was happening in the campus, what the people want, etc. Basically, it was going beyond simple acads. I never wanted my life to be just acads, and therefore the path of least resistance to going beyond acads was PORs, because there were so many PORs in such a small institute. And out of 120 people, 15-20% people had PORs, right? So it was not that difficult. So yeah, in terms of PORs, I really liked my quiz club president time as quiz club president, because it was a freshly brewed club. I was the second president there, uh, and I like quizzing, so that was great. Then as a part of placement committee, you got to understand the intricacies of how companies make the decisions, how do you attract companies, especially for a non-core role, because I was in the non-core placecom. Um, and then there was a constitution drafting committee, which was again a very interesting idea. I was working closely with the Gensec at the time, Avdesh Kumar Sharma, when I was in my fourth year, uh, because IIT Indore did not have a constitution. So spent a lot of time making it, researching other institutes' constitutions and so on. So it was overall done with the intent of doing more, getting more out of my experience in IIT Indore beyond just acads. And then coming to part three, which was the internship, right, professional experience. I by year three, I by second end of second year, I had realized that I do need to get some internship under my belt if I have to build a CV for my finals non-core. At that point in time, I did not know if CAT would pan out or not. So I was hoping to hell that some decent non-core company comes on campus and takes me on. So I thought of just blindly applying here and there. Did get to send CV to Reliance Industries Limited, and back then they were actually in demand of people who were willing to come and help them, because I think this is just before the launch of Geo, right before Reliance Corporate Park was launched in Ghansoli. So they were just kind enough to give me the opportunity, and then I worked for their polyester manufacturing plant में some specific strategy. So, but it was again brute force, like just trying my best to get an internship, and it was not that easy doing that internship because my BTP had started. It was beginning of fourth year, so I was in Mumbai, and I was also trying to manage my BTP supervisor's expectations. And it wasn't Mumbai; it was actually it's a place called Patal Ganga. It is beyond Navi Mumbai, so it took me like 3-4 hours just to come to a place in Mumbai where I could get a bus to Indore, would come back to Indore, then have some FaceTime with the professor. Thanks, Professor Amod. And then a couple of times I had to also manage expectations of my manager at RIL. So it was not that easy, but I was like, let's try our best to push the envelope here, but not at the expense of my BTP, because the grade was super important. But it was ultimately manageable, and I am glad I did it, because it was something that really made me stand out in my CV at IIM.
Right. And just wanted to understand, what is it with Lit Club that yesterday Nemath and I were talking, the correlation between these people going on to do very well in their non-core careers, and even some of them in their core careers as well. It's quite high.
I don't think there is a correlation. I think it's more a survivorship bias, or basically sampling bias. If you see people who have a lot of PORs, I believe it's a proxy for how much motivated you are to do things just beyond academics. Just being passionate about something enough to put some amount of your mental bandwidth and time in the day to make something valuable happen. I think that's a great marker for someone who will do well in their professional jobs. But that's not to say that people who are not into clubs won't do well, of course. But it's a significant marker, and that's also something that a lot of consulting firms look at. basically what all have you done beyond just immediate academics? Because everyone can do immediate academics is the first thing that comes to mind. I don't think everyone can do that. But as a recruiter, I look at, okay, this academics bucket is fine. A 9.5 versus 9.2 for me will not make much of a difference. But someone who is a 9.2 plus a general secretary is like a really amazing candidate for me to consider versus someone who has only done academics at 9.3. But that's just my 2 cents. I'm sure the recruiters have other things going on in my mind, but directionally it makes sense.
Right. And also highlighting to the point that you mentioned, I think even for me looking back at IIT Indore, one of the great things was because it was that close-knit community. I felt like you just got more opportunity to be in those positions, be it part of clubs or also in those
Yeah,
leadership roles, which like for example in your case you're the second president of Quiz Club, and when I was there Cinephiles, the filmmaking club, was just starting out, and then by the time we exited there was this AI club that we had formed. So
sure. Agreed. I mean, the opportunities are immense. But I would also like to give a flip side here, which is that it is up to you to make the most out of it. Because
right.
POR, just for the sake of a POR, okay, you may get a shortlist uh, in a B school, but you won't be able to talk much about it. And even if you get a shortlist, you will not have the requisite experience to have the confidence to deliver on those expectations. Because if let's say I was the head of the lit club in IIT Indore and I then get a job at some company and they ask me to be the editor of a newsletter, internal newsletter. If I don't have the experience, I will end up using Chat GPT or something. And 6 years ago, it wasn't even that easy to use technology to, develop creative content, right? I will fall flat on my face. So you have to be genuine in your effort for sure. But I believe that motivation and intention to make effort is not lacking. And therefore, smaller IITs, you have just a higher probability. It's a numbers game, right? Because you will have certain number of PORs, but the denominator is so small that like I said earlier, 20% of the batch ends up having PORs.
Right.
So now just switching gears a bit, we also wanted to dive into a little bit on your early life before IIT Indore. So wanted to just discuss on what were you before IIT Indore, how was it growing up in your hometown, and also did experiences there also shape like you getting into IIT Indore and what you wanted to get out of IIT Indore?
Uh, yeah. So I am from a not so small town, but still classified as a small town called Moradabad. It's 2.5 hours east of Delhi in Uttar Pradesh. Uh, Spent 16 years of my life there till 10th standard, and normal run of the mill good student, front bencher, between ranks 1 and 3 throughout my life, and just generally participating in recitation, declamation, essay writing contests in school, doing a bit of quizzing here and there, etc. So any guy that you pick up, any person that you pick up uh, who is in an IIT, right? They must be at the top of the ladder in their school. So nothing significantly different there, except for the fact that again I would like to give credit to my peers in my school also. Uh, like one of my friends there went to IT Delhi, 264 rank I think, and basically I am someone who derives a lot of motivation, inspiration from people around me, and that's the easiest way to get motivated because you don't have any dearth of people, at least in the Indian education system and the professional system, of people who can really push you. So that, but I would be really making a huge mistake if I don't give credit to my parents. They have always believed in me, pushed me, supported me in all the ways possible, and even more so because they're both doctors and they have also worked very hard their entire life. So just looking at my mom, who's a gynecologist, sleeping 4 hours every night, going on these emergency cases, that told me that life is not as easy, and this perception I had formed at a fairly young age. Therefore, you know, for sure, I am here because of that, because of what Moradabad gave me. That was the first 16 years. I was not a very physically active kid, not not unfit, but never played any sports beyond some swimming in summer vacations, etc. So, but that's it. So basically, no sports, a lot of TV, a lot of movies. I am still a big movie fan. Those were the two additional things apart from the constant pushing for academics, putting in hard work, that sort of muscle. That is what I got from Moradabad. Then I went to Delhi for a couple of years for IIT coaching. Spent some time in Vidya Mandir, and I have to admit that my JE Advanced was the worst exam that I had taken. Yeah, but I had always wanted to get into an IIT, so that happened, and I became a huge fan of movies in Delhi. Watched Inception like 30 times on my small phone because that was I just loved that film, Dark Knight, and so on. I got exposed to watching a lot of movies in Delhi.
Dark Knight is my one of the favorites as well. But one thing I'm noticing, I think even Shubh, you must be seeing this in all your experiences. One of the biggest factors has been the people around you. That the general concept of your average of 5 people around you. That's one big takeaway I'm having from at least what we are discussing
For,
so far.
for sure, for sure. And it doesn't have to be like the average of 5 people. And that's where I differ from the quote that I made in my speech back when I was graduating IIT Indore. You have to be selective for sure. Because the best of 5 people is what you should strive to be, not the average of the 5 people around you. I believe that all your acads, all your professional achievements are, I think, on one side, but on the other side, it's all the people that you have impacted and that have impacted you, and that you can really call your close circle, whom you can call as friends, family, and so on. I think that's super important.
So it was really interesting to know about your early life, your IIT and engineering days. Moving on to the MBA part of things, I think first of all, just wanted to understand your decision making. So you had good grades, we talked about it. You were in electrical engineering branch, which usually offers quite decent job opportunities in tech or core side from IIT Indore. So what is that one thing or that set of things that made you think that I'm not gonna do coding, which everyone else is doing? I want to do an MBA, and how did you then think about making it to IIM A?
Yeah, so, um yeah, I think it was a series of events or a series of things that happened to me, or the series of decisions that I took that ultimately brought me to the decision of taking CAT seriously. So the first year was completely about trying to change my branch. Couldn't change it, unfortunately. Uh, Grades weren't enough, definitely. But one thing that I realized was that, and even though I got great score in my first year programming exam, uh, I realized that my starting point compared to my CSE friends was way behind. My roommate was in computer science, Vijay Singh, and I could see him learning the things that I would have to spend some magic time on to understand. And it basically felt like a handicap being in electrical and trying to crack CS. I think I missed the train when I could not convert my branch to CS. And then I saw what other people are doing. So a few of my close seniors in quiz club, and also they were also in the lit club. They were prepping for CAT, and just getting a rundown of how CAT works. I thought it's something that I can do. My starting point for CAT was much better than competing with others on programming. So then by the end of second year, I realized that maybe I should try looking into what CAT is, etc. But I used to go to the weekend classes at time Indore and realize that this is not something that I am feeling underconfident about. I I can compete here. And then a few aim cats later, I realized, okay, this is going in the right direction. So basically, that's what happened. And even the process of placements, I felt like I was not going to get the best job on campus. Maybe I need some more time to invest in myself to become a more employable person. And I thought MBA is the best way to do it. And when I heard about what kind of careers you get eventually after MBA, consulting was not on top of my mind. Finance was, because IIM Cal takes more engineers. At least that is the perception still in my head. May or may not be true, but they take more engineers. They have very good finance courses. They have more
Right.
finance jobs uh, on campus, especially on the market side, trading side. So I thought, fine, maybe at least IIM Cal will be something that I get. But took the CAT exam, got a decent percentile, got all the calls, and among ABC, I could only convert A. So the decision was sort of made for me.
Right. I think quite interesting, and I think you also touched on the finance interest of yours during your MBA. And one of the highlights is you did go to Avendus Capital, which is a very top tier investment banking firm, during your summer internship. And I'm sure you must have thought about taking their PPI or PPO, whichever was happening at during that time. So, were you thinking about IB? And if yes, then how did you think about consulting after doing that internship?
So before I answer that question directly, I want to preface by saying that, sometimes all of us, and I was also guilty of doing this, we are very impatient for the longer term. What will I do eventually? Where will I be 3 years down the line? I have to make all the decisions with that goal in mind. I think 3 years, especially in a very dynamic time that we live in, 3 years is a very long time. It just gives you anxieties. So I realized this quite early on. I was like, in the initial few months of IMA, though they are very fast, like fast as hell. 2 semesters of IIT Indore is equivalent to 1 term of IIM Ahmedabad, for sure. But that's how the courses are designed. So not to the discredit of any of these institutions, but I realized that I am best suited for a finance slash consulting role right now, and those two are also aligned to my interests. So in summer internship, I got both I think a tier 2 consulting shortlist and a vendors shortlist. So I was trying to do both. I was not like, oh, I will only do finance or I'll only do consulting. Honestly, I could not be a chooser. Um, so in the first month itself, one of my IIT Indore seniors in IMA told me that IIT Indore is not a great brand, so don't pin your hopes too high. And I think that was helpful because I was quite realistic about my uh, possibilities. And thankfully, again, there I got a great set of friends who really helped me, get that internship. In the internship, I was just like super eager to just do as much as I can, because finance companies don't normally give out PPOs. And at this point in time, I had also taken a POR in IIM Ahmedabad. So just for the heck of it, right? Maybe this will help me somewhere down the line in getting a good consulting opportunity, because finance doesn't give out PPOs. So I became the head of alumni and external relations, and then I also got the Avendus PPO, and I also accepted it. But thanks to being an IMA, you can also apply for 3 other companies in addition to taking a PPO. So I tried my hand at consulting, at applying for consulting firms, and then I got into BCG. But one thing I realized about finance was that it is, and very easy to join the dots here, but it is a very independent career, as in you don't really work with large teams to build something, it is, at least my experience was quite isolated. And then I would only talk to my manager and that's it. And there was a team of basically one person. So, and we're looking at the experience of my friends in consulting internships. I felt that they were having a swell of a time, in their teams of 3-4 people, and I thought and I realized back then, as self-aware as I was, that if people are what is driving me, let me be with more people.
Right.
But that's just one of the many things, but a very important thing that really pushed me towards consulting. In addition to me thinking more about work-life balance, also because finance was a bit more pushy in terms of the number of hours. Consulting is not exactly all breezy, but it's definitely easier than finance.
And just for people listening to this podcast, is finance and consulting the two big ones that people go after in the MBA, or
No,
are
no, no,
there?
not at all. So their finance itself is like an agglomeration of multiple subfields. There is so there's big buckets. There's finance, there is consulting, there is sales and marketing, there is general management, there is product management and tech, and then there is other stuff like social impact and so on. So people go for all kinds of things, but majority, if I may take just rough numbers, over the past 4 or 5 years, uh, approximately 10% people go to finance, and this includes all kind of finance,
Mm.
investment banking, corporate banking, markets, and so on.
Right.
Around 20-25% people go to consulting. Similar number in maybe a bit more, around 30-35% in marketing, 15-20% in general management, and the rest in the product management and the long tail of buckets.
Okay.
So, to answer your question, no, people choose all kind of stuff.
And I was also curious, before joining IMA, you might have had bunch of preconceived notions which might have gotten broken once you joined IMA.
Sorry, I also want to answer part of a question that Shubh earlier asked, if I had a mentor. Uh, I had many mentors, but I did not have one single mentor. And that was mostly because no one had taken this path before. But that's
Right.
never a bottleneck in, decision making or guidance. You can always talk to 10 people and pick what suits you the best. Yeah, so that was for Shubh's question. But coming to what are some preconceived notions about IMA. So when I was sitting for interviews for B schools, I was like, I probably should not go for IMA because it is a very tough place to be in. I won't survive it. And I had a debate with my parents. Maybe I'll go for some other institution. So I was a bit concerned about that, but with some convincing from my parents who were like, just go for it, let's see what happens. Plus, IMA being the only B school I converted among ABC. So just by force of circumstances, I went to IMA. So the one thing I realized was that no one has the right answer. No one has it all figured out. I mean, some people definitely are much more prepared than you, but those make up for like 40 out of 400 people.
Right.
Most of the people there are still figuring things out. I think there's enough time for you to understand the game and play the game, and that's something I really appreciated. And plus, you had all the resources at your disposal. If you are motivated enough, people are very willing to help you. I think there's a lot of leeway for you to chart your own path. So that was one preconceived notion where I thought my fate is decided. I am from a not so well known an IIT, and I am a fresher. I will not be able to do zilch in IMA. That was my preconceived notion, but that got broken in like the first 2-3 months when I realized that very few people have it figured out fully.
Right. I think I echo a lot of those thoughts in terms of CV making, in terms of how recruiters see IIT Indore. I've had a senior who was doing my CV review tell me, "Is there an IIT in Indore?"
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that still happens.
because yeah, that still happens, and it's quite shocking to me because it's 15, 16 years till now. I don't know what is it that's lacking in terms of building up that brand because
People don't
people
know IIT
know.
Gandhinagar also, so it's fine, I guess.
So I think before we move on, one thing that I think is also very important for any undergrad students who thinks of an MBA program is if they, let's say, do not land to a very good MBA college, for example, the college is, let's say, a tier 2 or a tier 3, should they wait and get a good score and get a good admission? Or should they just skip? And if they are unable to do so, should they just skip doing an MBA altogether?
Hmm. So this is a very philosophical question, honestly, because you will find these dilemmas everywhere. While going to a school, you may not be able to get the best school in the city. You may be going to a tier 2 school in the city. This kind of dilemma is always there. Should I wait for something better to happen, or should I go for whatever I have right now? And that answer honestly is very personal. Uh, what I can talk about is the framework that I used, and it's a very rough framework that I'm just making up right now. So how you should decide on going for a certain opportunity that you have right now, which is of category B, and versus preparing for a category A or type A opportunity in the future. A is better than B. That's the question you are asking, right? It's a very philosophical question. So first of all, what are your circumstances right now? Does it really matter to you the outcome from B versus A? 2 years down the line versus 3 years down the line. If the outcome is not mattering to you, then I think you can go for B also. For example, had I not gotten A, IIM A, had I gotten some other great institution like, let's say, XLRI, I would have gone, no questions asked, because my ultimate objective of getting a job in the management field was getting fulfilled, right? So if your objective function is getting fulfilled, then it is not a matter of whether I can get a better brand or not, because because if you are going to A, B, C, L, XLRI, ISB, I think it's all the same. The quality of professionals that we get from all of these schools is more or less the same, right? Brand is a very uh, it's something that we have in our mind, right? If you're able to crack any interview of a firm that you want to ultimately be a part of, then brand stops mattering. If they're coming to your school has a good brand, right? Now I'll talk about the other side of it, right? Had I not gotten A, B, C, L, XLRI, ISB, FMS, you make your own list. That was my list. Then I would have thought of, okay, can I invest more in myself, give myself one more year, and get to a better place? Because what I am getting right now is not delivering the objective that I had in my mind. So that would have meant that maybe I'm spending one more year unemployed, preparing for CAT or whatever, right? But in the larger scheme of things, we're gonna live 70, 80 years, 70 or 80 years, right? 1 year or 2 years don't matter. If you can get to a much better position professionally, capabilities wise, and so on. So that is the thinking I have in my head. So long story short, think of what you ultimately want to achieve. If you're not achieving that with what you have in your hand right now, then for sure go for one more year of preparation and so on. But if you're getting it, I feel it is okay to go for a slightly supposedly allegedly lower tier institutions than IIM. But that's just how I think about this. The situation that each individual faces could be quite different, but the fundamental principle remains the same. Are you getting what you want, or are you being just too picky?
Right. So it's like once you have your goal set, kind of reverse engineer from there and then kind of try to make that decision.
Yeah, exactly. So always work backwards from what you want to achieve.
Right.
But a timeline of 1 year in a span in a career of 40 years does not really make much of a difference.
Right. More
And
long term.
just as a corollary, what I have seen, people discussing is ROI, ROI of MBA. I think that is one of the most misleading metrics ever.
Hmm.
Uh, you are spending, let's say, 20 lakhs versus 40 lakhs. I think it hardly matters, because the what you can make after getting a very good degree does not matter at all. This uh, I've seen online chat forums when I was preparing for CAT. People were preferring FMS over other B schools just for ROI. FMS is a great school. I know that for a fact. One of my best managers have been from FMS. But going for FMS just because it is cheaper, I think that's not the right way to make decisions. So that's also something that people should keep in mind, that ROI of education is a very flawed metric. Yeah, but there's a nuance there. If you do an MBA from outside India and then come back to India, then you will be in debt for quite a long time. Their ROI does make sense because there is all this purchasing power parity differences and so on. But given education in India and job in India, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for using ROI as a metric.
We covered a lot of different points from your early life, IIT Indore, and also your like time at IIM Ahmedabad. In this next section, which is also our favorite section, where we kind of try to dive deeper into some specific topics that we have. Jumping right into it, the first one is a topic around the fast-paced work life currently in the trends that we are seeing. So one thing that we both have been noticing, me and Shubh, and of course, you might be seeing this as well, of how for jobs that offer really high growth, there's generally a demand for high work hours, and especially we have seen a lot with consulting. Like we have friends in consulting as well who say there's a good demand of long work hours in consulting, and similar goes to other roles like places like startups or some other high growth companies. So firstly, just to start off with, how do you view those long work hours or the time required for that roles which offer that kind of growth?
Hmm. See, again, I'm sensing that this question is intended towards decision making, right? Whether I should go for a high growth job that requires longer working hours versus should I be okay with a lesser higher growth job, maybe a bit less of remuneration while having a very stable work life. Again, depends on the individual. Uh, I will give my 2 cents here. Uh, we are young. I am 29 years old. I can really push myself till, let's say, I'm 34, 35, maybe 40, right? Uh, I know for a fact that in India, at least things don't come that easy to us because it is very competitive. I see the conversion rates of Harvard, and I see, okay, out of 4,000 people, like 50 people get selected. I'm just making those numbers up, but the conversion rates in India are like way low compared to the US. So I have to accept that reality and understand that if I have to get to a certain level of wealth, if I have to get to a certain level of value that I add to this world through my job, right? There are certain sacrifices to be made, and I think sacrifice is a big word to use. It's not a sacrifice. I like my job. I like going to work every day, working with very high performing teams, very motivated teams, working with my clients on the most important of topics that are really moving the needle for their businesses, right? That gives me a high, right? I find meaning in my job. And if my job is requiring me to not work 9 to 5 but work from, let's say, 9 to 9 or 9 to 10, right? I am okay with that because uh, I consider my job not to be just a job, but also a very important part of my life where I derive a lot of meaning from. But that's for me. If it is not that important for someone, right, then they should not have the FOMO that I am not enough in a high growth sector. I could be working very hard or whatever. You have to make peace with your decisions, right? And you should not have regrets. It is a very plain and straightforward, writing on the wall, where you have, like you said, Neiman, the more stable jobs, not a very high growth. You will get 9 to 5. You will get 2 hours to work out in the gym every day. You can go meet friends every day, and so on. And that's a great way to live life. But I don't envy those people because I have made peace with this kind of career. Again, I don't want this to feel like I am just a slave who is working day in and day out just for earning money. No. Had that been the case, there are other ways of doing it. I could have chosen finance because finance pays more, much more for the incremental hours that I would have added to my workday. But I'm not doing that because that doesn't motivate me as much. So the trick is to derive more meaning out of things so that they don't feel like a huge burden on you.
Just to follow up on this, was curious on what techniques you use to balance different parts of your life out that you seen work for you.
Yeah. First of all, it's the mindset thing. I know I'll be working not a 9 to 5 job, so I'll be missing out on certain events. Let's say someone has a 5 p.m. baby shower on a Wednesday. I know I'll be missing out on it. Right. So first of all, it's about convincing yourself that you will miss out on some things, but at the same time, I have found people to be very, very understanding of your career commitments. Like, I can't be there, but I will send a very heartfelt apology, and people will accept it, right? And it is coming out of genuine, unavailability of time, and not because I don't care about my personal commitments. So people understand. It will take them some adjusting to be that kind of a friend, but otherwise I have at least my family and my friends from school, from undergrad, from MBA to be very, very accepting, and they know that this is the kind of uh, career that Ashish has, and we accept it. For example, I have a very good friend from my hometown who tells me that I know for a fact Ashish won't pick up my call, but I still call him so that he knows I want to talk to him, and then maybe he can take some time out on the weekend. It's not that bad. I can call that friend at 10 p.m. At night also, but she realizes that it's very difficult for me to be available all the time, and that's by virtue of the job that I have. So first of all, it's the mindset, and also setting expectations with your friends and family that this is the job that I have, right? And being very honest about it. It is what it is, right? I like doing this, and I may not always be at the beck and call, unlike what you see in TV shows like Friends, right? Middle of the day, they are sitting in a coffee shop and solving other friends' problems. So that's one. Number number two is making sure that you, going back to my earlier answer, that you're deriving meaning out of work. If it is just for the money, your brain will just resign, right? Then you will resent yourself. यार ये मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ? What am I doing right now? Because because the amount of money that all of us will be earning after we graduate from IIT, right? It is enough for sustenance. It is enough for the kind of life we want to lead, or the kind of life that we would have led in most cases when we were being brought up. So then after a point, at least for me, the additional number in my bank account doesn't matter. I would like to be adequately rewarded for the effort I'm putting in. I would like to be at least at the market level of my salary, right? Like what others are getting paid in a similar job with similar background. But beyond that point, I think money is just one of the benefits. The main benefit, or one of the main benefits, should be that my work is really motivating me. It gives me a lot of confidence about myself. It is making me a better person. I'm adding value to people's lives and so on. That's number two. Number three is uh, there's 3A and 3B. 3A is taking time off. Make sure you take time off for important things. Spend time with your parents, your family, your spouse, your SOs, for your friends. Don't skip weddings. Be at weddings, because I think weddings are, you know, very the one event where you get to meet everyone that you are close with, right? Or at least most of people. And don't skip important events. Like, try to make time, put in the effort, right? If you are putting in the effort and to the best of your abilities, you will not regret. Uh,
Right.
if you're getting 20 leaves in a year, make sure that you are utilizing some of those so that you don't feel shortchanged at the end of the year. Because sometimes in momentum of everyday life, you may think, okay, maybe I don't take this leave, and then maybe I work really hard and take all these leaves to next year. But when you're 28. That entire year is wasted without a leave. You could have gone to Vietnam or Sri Lanka, or somewhere in Southeast Asia, but you were not able to do it because you were too focused, and that will you were too focused on work, and that will result in burnout and just a general
Right.
dissatisfaction from your job. So make sure that you take some time off. Those leaves are there for a reason. That's 3. And 3B is taking some time out for yourself every day also is very important. It may be in terms of keeping yourself fit. Just looking at reels also, I think it's okay. It is brain rot, but if it's what's keeping you afloat, I think it's fine. As long as you realize that your attention span is not going down, you can still read a book, you can still watch a movie end to end without getting up. But those things are also quite important. And just indulge yourself once in a while, so that you realize, okay, that only one part of my life is not the end of my so I think these 3 4 things are what keep you afloat.
Right. I think it's great to know that you have that support system in terms of your family and friends who understand where you come from and how you would react to some of these events and situations. And just to point out for the audience, I think one of the unique things about your answers versus the other guests that we have had is the structured approach and the enumeration that we famously talk about in consulting. So, folks, this is what you need to learn if you want to be a great consultant.
That's just advertisement. That's just advertising. That's just the poster. I'm sure the other people also
Right.
have it figured out. I'm maybe in a much better way. I think I still have a long way to go in figuring a lot of things out on how to balance personal and professional life.
So, I think one of the other themes that we wanted to cover with you was, of course, your battlefield, which is consulting, right? And first of all, being from an MBA college, now I understand why everyone is doing consulting because everyone else is also doing consulting. And so, can you just demystify for young undergrad students for our college and other students as well who might be watching, what exactly is consulting in very simple terms? And why has been there historically so much craze for this one role?
Right, I can talk about both things. So, okay, consulting is just giving advice in the simplest of terms, right? But the consulting that you do typically after MBA is advising companies, institutions, and governments on their most critical issues. Because the day to day they can manage themselves, but when they have something really important, for example, entering a new market, or fixing their internal processes, which is something that is not their core capability, they reach out to consultants. So that is what consulting is. And why it has been a craze is primarily because of two things. One, the remuneration is fairly decent. Uh, but more than that, I think it's at least for me, what was the really uh, important factor to consider while choosing consulting was that you are not pigeonholed into one industry one function. For example, if I'm doing sales and marketing, I'm doing sales and marketing for the company that I'm employed with. So if I'm an FMCG sales and marketing person, I'm always an FMCG sales and marketing person. Very difficult to move out. There may be adjacencies. I can do some looking, distribution, supply chain, and so on, but not a lot of leeway for me to change roles, etc. Consulting just does give you that flexibility for 4 or 5 years. So if I choose consulting immediately after MBA, I can switch to most other jobs over the next 4 years. For example, I can go into finance, into private equity, into investing. I can get into sales and marketing. I have seen those exits also. I can go into product management and so on. I think it is the optionality that is inherent to consulting that really gives people the comfort that you can end up doing something else also. You are not getting pigeonholed. So that's one thing. But number three is consulting gives you direct access to very, very important people very early in your career. And obviously that comes at the expense of you having to ramp up very fast, you having to work sometimes longer hours to be capable enough to advise such people. But the satisfaction that you get, both intellectual and professional, on someone using your advice, your recommendation in their daily life, I think that's something that is unmatched in other domains.
And I think you have fairly done, I should use a better word than fairly, you have done very well at BCG in your last 6 years. So maybe one or two things that makes up a good consultant, and you can just focus on what you did maybe, or how did things happen for you. What if you had to define a good consultant, maybe these are the 2 3 things that Ashish believes in.
I think the smartest thing I ever did in consulting was to choose the right people to work with. I have to say, my career at BCG would have looked quite different had I worked with a different set of people. Not to say that there are right and wrong set of people to work with. It's just that you have to choose the person or set of people who match your wavelength, to put it in very simple terms. So I spent first 2.5 years of my professional career, which was also first 2.5 years of my consulting career, in Southeast Asia. There I got some really fantastic people to work with who were great both in terms of learning how consulting works and also how to treat people in general. I had some really tough times during COVID. I was stuck in a hotel in Singapore, and my manager there back then was quite understanding, but pushed me at the same time. Then I got to work with some other really fantastic people in terms of how they approached consulting, problem solving. Just looking at that made me feel like I should really put in my efforts to be a bit more like these people. Again, going back to my recurring theme, the people around me make me who I am today, and that's also going to be true going forward. And it's not just people whom you report to; it's also people who are reporting to you. Now that I'm in a management position, like I'm a principal now, but for the last 2 years I was a project leader. I realized that I definitely am not the smartest person in the room, and should not be. Otherwise, I will stop growing. That's a cliche, but it really does play out, especially when you are managing a team of very strong set of people. So I think I've chosen the very right people to work with, and hopefully will continue to do so. That's one thing. Second thing is, you have to learn the tricks of the game, the rules of the game. How consulting works, you can question it ad nauseum. Like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why do I have to fly 2,000 kilometers just to meet my client? But things may not make sense to you when you're younger, but they make sense to you when you're you have spent a bit more time in the system. uh, like travel is one of the issues in consulting, where you have to travel and be at the client side and so on. It is important. People are paying for your services. They want to know that you are genuinely concerned, and I think remote work in consulting does not work. At least it doesn't work to the extent that you being in person, walking the corridors helps. So some in the beginning these things did not make sense to me, because I was flying from Malaysia to Indonesia, like KL to Jakarta every week, and half the time I was not understanding why could this thing not be done remotely. But then years, months, cases passed by, and I realized no, it is important to be at the center of action,
Right.
and at the seismic center. That's one way to put it. But yeah, so that's one example of things not making sense to you, but that is how the game is played, right? So make sure that you have that uh, I don't know, maturity, understanding that things are supposed to happen in a certain way, and you can either question it and make things slightly easier for yourself, or maybe convince yourself, or you can just go with the flow, understand how things are working. If they don't work out for you, then maybe you can take a step back, you can leave the company, you can go for projects which do not require you to travel and so on, or you can just play the game. That's part 2. And part 3 is just taking risks in general. For example, going for my first job out of India, where I did not know the culture, or did not understand the business environment, did not know what is the Sensex equivalent in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, right? Uh, I still took a plunge and thought, maybe let's see where it takes me, and boy did it do wonders for me, because I
Right.
think the 2.5 years spent in Southeast Asia were super important for me. They they made me a different kind of a consultant than what I would have been had I spent all the 6 years of my consulting career in India. And that also shows in how I approach things daily. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but it made me what I am, and therefore I really respect the way that they do consulting in Southeast Asia. So taking risks will make you a unique individual. So you should keep on taking them. Of course, they should be calculated. It's not like I'm going on a going to a company that takes me to Africa, and there is like physical harm potentially there and so on. So keeping that aside, within a certain constraint, I think you should also always be taking risks, especially because you are younger. Maybe I won't do this when I'm 35 or 40 years old, but back then I had no attachments to the country. I wasn't married, etc. So I could do those things and still not having any significant impact on my life. So I did that and found a lot of growth coming my way.
Right. I think quite an interesting story, and I think you are putting it quite humbly that it is all the people around you that are helping you to grow in a way that you are doing. But there's also an element of how much you can extract out of the people around you, and then how can you build on top of it. And as you said, try to be the best out of the lot, not the average. So that is something I think one of the key takeaways for me. And I think one of the other, and I hope people are also reading between the lines as to what consulting is and provides you. And you have talked about those things quite briefly in some of your answers as well. One last thing that I want to touch on in the consulting bit before we move on is, can we also address who consulting is not for? Because apart from all the craze, all the fad, I think there is certain type of requirement that consulting possess, that consulting wants from the person, right? And we do see a great deal of attrition rates from across the consulting firms and across the domains. You talk about niche firms or even the bigger ones. So, basis your understanding, can you maybe also touch on who it is not for?
I I don't like to say that something is not meant for someone, because again it is a very personal choice, because I may say that it is not for people who don't want to work hard, but what if it motivates them, right? What if they find the right project to work on? But what I can tell you is that there are a few things that consulting has as inherent challenges, and if those challenges are a deal breaker for you, then you should probably not go for them. So one is that, like I mentioned just now, that in the first couple of years in consulting, I think things don't make sense because it is not super intuitive. Uh, Especially if you, let's say, go for a niche industry like tech, or let's say you go for social sector, things will not make a lot of sense to you. So just having a very thick skin, where you will get a lot of feedback in the way that you think about things, the way that you communicate things, it will be a paradigm shift in how you have been told to do things so far. For example, consulting is always about answer first, uh, because people don't have the patience. You want to get decisions in a 1 hour meeting from a CXO level person, right? So you always give the answer first. But we have an inherent tendency to talk about the effort that went into. First, I did this, then I made this code, then I ran this code, then this happened, and this happened. That doesn't work. So that, while I'm talking about it quite simply, it was a big shift for me. So that's one part where you will get a lot of feedback in the first couple of years. You will realize that things in consulting are not the same as other domains, especially in engineering, right? So that's one. That's a challenge. Challenge number two is travel. You may have to travel to remote places. While my travel has always been to metro cities, because I have always been involved in the tech services domain. If you work for industrial goods or manufacturing clients, you may have to travel to remote locations in India, and you have to be okay with that. So that's challenge number two. Challenge number three is that not a challenge per se, but a nuance about consulting, or a characteristic of consulting, is that you are never uh, mm, given the chance to be comfortable with a set of people. What I mean by that is your managers change. So let's say you find a really great manager that you want to work with for the rest of your life. That will probably not happen. So you have to make peace with the fact that people change, teams change, and so on. Clients also change, and projects change, and like dynamism is like a core truth of consulting. So if you want to get settled in a particular domain, etc., that may come a bit later in life, but at least the people that you work with will keep on changing. I think those three are the main things to consider before entering consulting. Like the long hours, feedback, and constant, or not constant, but inevitable change in the kind of people you work with.
One other thing that we did want to touch upon is, was there ever a point in your life where you did try to see an option where you wanted to maybe leave the consulting world, or have there been places or events that have pushed you so far as to think that, or think about an exit?
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone questions that about any career that they are in when they are facing difficult circumstances. For me, it was when I was alone in Singapore, staying in that hotel room, and we were still figuring out remote ways of working, so things were not super efficient, so the working hours were long, and because we didn't have anything else to do, we decided we may as well just do work, right? So back then, I think more by a force of circumstances, I was thinking of maybe looking at some other job, but back then I didn't have an option because I was stuck in Singapore, and then that would have to mean that I was looking for jobs which are not really available during COVID and so on. But yeah, but apart from that, I've been very fortunate in terms of my support system. My wife has been very supportive. She's also in consulting, and mm, we have a system of how to divide responsibilities and take care of things at our house. My parents have also been quite supportive. They understand that I can't come back to my hometown very often, and they do miss me, and I miss them as well. But we know that this is what is required. So apart from one two instances where things were out of the control of BCG or myself, I have been fortunate enough to not come to a point where I think I should leave consulting so far. But so those having said that, there are two things that I want to derive out of what I just said. One is, if you have the choice, make sure that you have a spouse who truly understands, what your passion is for, such a career where you may have to spend long hours at work. And second is, know when to fold them. Basically, know when to fold your cards and leave the table, because some things are not worth, sacrificing your family life. For example, I know of someone in consulting who left their job because they were having to travel remotely, and they had a newborn baby, and they could not spend enough time. So they left their consulting job, and I respected that decision a lot. And which is completely fine. At the end, it's just a job. You may be deriving a lot of meaning out of it, but if you are having to sacrifice something that's super important to you, like seeing your kid grow up, then you should leave. And things may be even less dire than that. For example, if you are having terrible health, or if you're not having, a great time at your job, you're having bad projects back to back, and it has been a year, for example, you can definitely think of leaving the job, right? But know when to fold them is basically my mantra. Thankfully, that point hasn't come so far for me, but I am very cognizant of this thing, that your career is only part of the full equation.
Yeah, and I hope it keeps going. Yeah, I think just to sum it up, it feels like, as you're saying, just making peace with the dynamic aspects of be it consulting or even whatever you might be doing might be one big factors, along with just reverse engineering again back from what your ultimate goal is to what decisions you need to take now, because everything seems to be like a personal decision. There's no generalized answer for anything. It's mostly what you want to get out of it. Yeah. So I think this section, the biggest aim was to dive deeper, and I think hopefully all the people listening to this got the answers out of it.
So I think, Nimit, before we move on to the fun questions, I think one important and interesting question for me personally, because Ashish is someone who has done his MBA 6 years before. I'm currently doing it right now. Although the context is slightly different in terms of 1 year MBA and how the whole dynamics of IIM happens. But in general, Ashish, how do you think engineering student should navigate the life in a B school, right? Because you enter B school, you see so many people, so diverse group of people who have done so well in their careers, and that's why they are at a good school, right? So how do you navigate competition? How do you think about your own outcomes that you want? How do you think about those long working nights, academics? It feels like there's just a lot to deal with at the same time. So maybe you can draw parallels as to how was your experience, and if there is any specific things that you did to navigate those 2 years successfully.
So, first of all, not being overwhelmed by things, by stuff happening around you, that is very important. Because the moment you start getting overwhelmed and you start comparing yourself to others in an unhealthy way, that can result in a downward spiral. Because you may feel that you're not doing enough, and you're still sleeping at 4 a.m. every day. Where does it end, right? So, taking things one at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, is very important, and that's where planning comes in. So, you have to understand what is the most important for you, right? There is acads, there is the CV, both for internship and the final, and then there are the clubs that you're a part of and your friends, right? But if you don't take care of the core, which is the acads and the CV, or it could be one of the two, maybe you just want to get into an internship and take it easier on the acad side, whatever it is, right? But you have to understand what's important for you and make sure that those milestones are not missed out. So let's say you wanted to have your CV reviewed by 5 seniors this week. Make sure that if not 5, 4 are done within the week, so that it doesn't give you anxiety. So basically plan things out, and people are okay with you missing out on commitments, dates, birthdays, and so on if you are busy somewhere else, because everyone is there for a reason, and that reason is very clear, right? So that's the first part, not getting overwhelmed. How not to get overwhelmed? Be planned. Point number 2 is about having a very strong support system on campus. While you'll have parents and everyone, you can't get everything solved on a call, right? So you have to find people. Don't be hurried about it, but you have to find people within the first month or so whom you can really talk to about your anxieties, about just taking general guidance, and knowing that there is someone who is going through something very similar, right? That gives you a lot of comfort that okay, this person also doesn't have everything figured out. Let's figure it out together, right? So that's also very important. And the support system can be friends, seniors. It could also be professors, and that is one part that I don't see happening very often. Where I don't think a lot of people approached professors with their anxieties, and it's also a function of because they are evaluating you and so on. But at least for when things come to things like placements, right? When it comes to things like placements, you have to take support from wherever you can get it, right? And third is making time for yourself, your hobbies, etc. That is also very critical to your overall well-being. One more thing that was more personal to me, and it may or may not work for everyone, is play to your strengths. For example, my strength was just talking to people, right? So I stood for elections, became a class rep, and then things went on from there. Then I could stand for elections for the Student Affairs Council. I realized I was decent at it, and therefore my strength was that, and that really reflected in my CV also. So if you do things that you like and you play to your strengths, I think you will always be in a very good position for a recruiter.
Right. And I think I could relate to and understand a lot of those points quite closely. And one of the other things I think you talked about is the importance of talking to different people, right? And you must have seen a very diverse cohort at IIM A. There are people who have, let's say, come from arts background, or people who have done some bachelor's in design. And here at ISB, I see people who have come from merchant navy, people who have spent years at CRPF as a commander. So I
Wow.
think it was really shocking to me how the context is so different for me versus for them. People who have their partners and a kid on campus competing with me or other younger folks for the same job. So talking to them and understanding where they come from, why are they doing this, what is it that they want to get out of. I think that really helped open my mind up to how different people think. So can you touch on what do you think is really important with networking around and building those long-term relationships?
Yeah, and I really liked the two examples that you gave. Someone from CRPF, someone from Merchant Navy. You end up realizing that your hardships are nothing compared to theirs. And I would not say hardship, but the context is that they have to think about two additional people on campus, right?
Right.
Their well-being in addition to their own. So they must be having a lot of FOMO because they must have had to miss parties, they must have had to miss out on a few more clubs, etc. But you realize that you know if you miss out on things, it's not the end of the world, right? As long as you have some core things sorted out, I think everything else will be okay. Basically, there is no right answer and there is no wrong answer either. One of my profs at IIMA used to say strategy is the art of closing doors, right? So you close your doors on a few things, and that's how you proceed. So yeah, I think talking to different people is very important. And while I said that you should talk to professors, I don't think I talk to enough professors, or maybe not enough to professors. Right? I asked one professor, uh, what, how is it going to help me, right? What I am studying here, and he mentioned the same thing, that all of these things, all of the courses are designed to do two things. One, to give you a diverse perspective, and second, to push your thinking, right? uh, if you remember, in first year of IIT, we had a course, which mathematics course, which was very abstract. We had to prove like one is greater than zero, right? And a lot of people used to question that, why am I studying this? This is super obvious, but that was going to push your thinking. Philosophy is a subject because it makes you question your very fundamental beliefs, and I think that that happens very often in our professional lives also, where I have to think on a very fundamental level on whether doing something is right or wrong, because there is no standard playbook for living everyday life of a consultant, right? So then you have to rely on your fundamental values and fundamental logic, right? And that comes from repeatedly pushing yourself, either in courses that make you question if one is more than zero, or courses that are not directly related to your uh, field of career, or your profession, right? So this perspective came when I talked to a professor whom I should have talked to earlier. And then he also said one thing, first, if you let's say you want to do something that is very specific to a course, right? And you're not getting that opportunity right out of B school, just do whatever you have to get into a stable position career wise, pay off all your loans. Like I had a loan, right? So he was like, "Pehle loan pay off karo and then think about all these things." That perspective, Shah Rukh Khan also talks about that in reels, right? Right? Art comes only after you have reached a certain level. But a professor also told me that, so it was a good perspective to have, and I really appreciated that. Should have done it earlier, but again, to my point being, talk to as many people as you can, professors, even the admin staff, right? I used to work with the alumni office, and the alumni office used to tell me that what was their approach on capturing the eyeballs of alumni, and I really like that, the way that they were doing it. It may not directly be applicable, but I often think about those discussions when I am faced with a certain problem, and sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. But you're making the most of your time there anyway, on campus. I hope
Yeah.
that answered your question. Sure.
I think for sure. And I
Yeah.
really hope that I take away something and implement some of these things at my 3 months of remaining MBA journey. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and I think even in general, just keeping MBA aside as well, I think these points might be helpful for even like anyone watching this who's maybe not planning on MBA. One last thing I want to cover before we dive into our last section is just the fitness and the hobbies, maybe during the B school or even right now during consulting. From my personal experience, I've found fitness being one big things of my life, really, because there are days when the work goes up to 14 hours, 15 hours, and having one consistent thing that I do between 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. just helps me balance out the whole day. So I just wanted to get your thoughts as well on physical fitness and hobbies.
I have to admit, I was not very physically fit uh, during B school and even during IIT Indore. Uh, and I think that was primarily because of the way that people think about academics in India. Like academics is only about studying. But as you grow, as you grow older, you realize that if you're not physically fit, you are not able to give your 100% at work also. So uh, the and I have to give the credit to people at BCG in Southeast Asia. One of my managers was into running, so he introduced me to running, and then I also took to it. Not that I'm like super regular about it, but I am in a much better shape now than let's say 6 years ago because of running. So long story short, I was able to get into fitness to a certain extent because of my parents, because of people in BCG, and also people around me. Also, generally, how the perception towards fitness are changing in India, right? Cleaner eating, eating more protein, and so on. But all those things are important because on the in the weeks that I have not been able to work out, I do see myself being feeling a bit more annoyed and lethargic at not meeting my fitness goals. So taking time out for that is important. And while I'm no fitness instructor, I do think that just some cardio, some weight training, and eating clean goes a long way in making you fitter in the longer run. Especially when you are, many people tell me that they really feel great about the fact that they worked out in the earlier parts of their career, because when they were 35 they did not face the same issues that similar issues that their parents may have been facing, because there was no fitness culture back then. Maybe capitalizing on that culture, cult, cross training, whatever, you should just go for it, whatever appeals the most to you. But being regular about it and consistent about it really does wonders, and keeps you fresh, keeps you energetic about your days, especially when you have longer hours. But that said, I think hobbies, if you have any outside sports, outside fitness, you should keep on doing those. Basically, being in touch with your, um I would not say inner child. I think that's a that's an overstatement. But being in touch with the informal side, the fun side, uh, is important, because I feel if I, let's say, I watch a lot of movies, and I'm really passionate about watching movies and TV shows. Have watched 70 movies this year. At least try to watch a lot of TV shows, and be on the top of Mela quizzing in general, because that just reminds me that there is more to life than just this career and fitness, right? Because career and fitness are very output oriented, but you should do something which is more about enjoying the process, right? And I know I said I watched 70 movies, which is also an outcome metric, but I enjoy watching movies, I enjoy watching TV shows, right? So I keep on doing that, because that takes the pressure away from doing something for the uh, outcome. It is more about just being in the moment. So yeah, keep doing those things. And a friend mentioned to me that you should also be creating things. Well, I have not gotten to that level. Uh, Instead of just consuming, watching sports, watching movies, watching shows, listening to podcasts, maybe also create something. And I think you guys are doing it, right? And that's inspiring to me. That's something that I'm going to take away from this discussion, that you are creating something. And creating something is a risky thing, because you don't know if people will like it or not, or if you will like it or not. But you're taking that risk. You are doing something that is just beyond consumption. So that's also something that some people like doing, and they feel it is more fulfilling. Not that I've done it, but maybe something that people may relate with.
Yeah, 100%. And I really resonate with the fitness part and also the hobbies part. Just that somehow it makes me feel more centered as well. Even in the evening when I come back after that gym session, somehow I have this positive energy, a new pair of eyes to look on the problem, and it works out well.
Yeah, and I've seen this, working really well for people from other countries. For example, all my European counterparts, or American counterparts, they have really, outdoorish hobbies.
Yeah.
For example, in one of my trainings in Europe, where they had consultants and project leaders from all over the world, the instructor asked, "What do you do to de-stress yourself?" So someone said listening to music, someone said eating a pizza, whatever, right? But what the one answer that kept coming more and more from the more Western principals, PLs, and consultants was that I go for a run. I go for a swim, I go for a walk, I go for a jog, right? And I really like that. Plus, they all felt really energetic in the moment.
Mm.
Um, it could be just me as an observant, but I like that part of prioritizing fitness as a de-stressor versus something that is more uh, consumption based.
Yeah, I agree. I see that similarly here, where running and hiking are the two most popular like things that people do.
Yeah.
But awesome. So yeah, this brings us to the conclusion to the second part. So yeah, we are at our final section of the podcast, and this is a quick rapid fire question round, including some informal questions. So just whatever is on top of your mind, just shoot it out. So yeah, firstly, what is your best memory of IIT Indore?
I think the Goa trip with my friends immediately after CAT, that hit differently because there was no pressure at all. Yeah, that was pretty
With
fun.
the AI wave coming around, is Gen AI or has Gen AI started to make your slides or make life easier?
Uh, yes, it has. In fact, it's it's the next big thing I think in consulting also. Even all the leaders, they are very bullish about using AI. It definitely makes my work more efficient. It leaves time for thinking about the more critical stuff, and I think it's an all-round a great value to add for my clients also. And it's not like we are making Gen AI do the thinking, but it's more about just to refine this email or
Right,
maybe structure the slide a bit better. But all of those things that would take me an hour to do takes ChatGPT a minute or less to do. But it's very important to be skilled in that.
right,
So yes, AI is coming and it's coming to make our lives easier, is my thinking so far. But the jury is still out.
right. Do you use social media at all? And for what
Uh,
purposes?
yeah, I use it for scrolling. uh, I don't post much, but yeah, I use social media. I use Reddit. I love Reddit. It has some very niche communities that I like to engage with.
Oh yeah, given Quiz Club, Reddit is one good thing. One best advice that you've ever received.
Uh, Let me think. There's a lot of good advice everywhere, but my career advisor in BCG uh, actually gave me some very good advice. It's not the best advice. I received a lot of very good advice, but he told me solve for people first, and then your life will be very easy. This he told me when I had just become a project leader, and that's the first time you're managing people, and that advice resonates with me. If you solve for the team, if you make sure that their life is easy, and you're putting in your best efforts to make their life easy, I think that goes a long way in producing a very well motivated team. Yeah, so that's something that came to my mind just now.
Awesome. What's your one big resolution for 2025?
Interesting. I haven't made any resolutions, honestly. I don't want to make year-end resolutions because it just puts too much pressure on them. But I would like to continue being fit. Want to spend more time with family. Thankfully, my current project is in Bangalore, so I don't have to travel much. Last year that wasn't the case, so I'm gonna utilize that a bit more. But come back to me maybe in a couple of months. I'll have some resolutions for you.
Awesome. And one last question from my side. Given that you've said you're a movie fan throughout, what are your top three recommendations for movies
Oh
or
no,
TV
don't,
shows?
don't do this to me. They change every day. There's this app
Right
called
now.
Letterboxd, if you know about it. Asks celebrities their top four movies. So I'm gonna give you my top four movies at this point in time. Uh, I really like The Godfather Part One. Uh, I liked Tumbad, the Indian horror movie back from 2018. I love the movie called La La Land, and I really like Before Sunrise. But last year I also saw some really good movies. I saw this movie called Past Lives. I liked Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders, and I liked Maharaja, the one with the Vijay Sethupathi. Lapata Ladies was great. 12th Fail. Um, Great movies all around, man. I mean, don't ever put someone in a position to list their favorite movies. I also like Swades a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
sure.
I don't think I gave you the right answer, but that's my list of
Oh
movies.
no, I think I've got a list of movies that I want to watch from those that.
You can follow me on Letterboxd if you
Got
if
it.
you yeah. But that's just aside. I really like that.
Yeah, I haven't used Letterbox yet, but we'll check it out. A few from my end. So, given that you travel a lot, which is your favorite city, country, any place
I
that
don't
you'd
travel a
recommend?
lot actually. I have traveled largely because of consulting, but
Hmm.
I did not go on exchange uh, in on campus. So there are there are people who have traveled like 50 countries. But out of the places I've traveled so far, I really liked Versailles, Palace of Versailles. I love Bali, especially for the scuba that they offer in Nusa Penida. And as a city to live in, I love Singapore. It's so structured, very safe, and quite cosmopolitan. But yeah, these are the things that I like, the places I like outside India. In India, I love Indore. Very clean,
Wow.
great food. Chappan Dukan, one of my favorites. I really gained a lot of weight in Indore. Uh, and yeah, Bangalore is great too. Bangalore, Mumbai. Yeah. I love the vibe of Mumbai, and I love the weather in Bangalore.
Right. One thing that IIT gave you that IIM could not.
Hmm. Interesting. Uh, IIT gave me a lot of um character. Like my character was uh, largely built during my IIT days. Thanks a lot to my friends also, and because you have 4 years, you can do much more. You can take more risks.
Right.
The amount of opportunities that I got in IIT, those are varied. It was a very eclectic mix, and but in IIM it was more focused. So yeah, and I think the friends from IIT are much more. How should I put it? Much more fun, much more informal, and I think you have the other words that you can use to describe them. But yeah,
Right. When is your book on pop culture set to release?
oh yeah, that I think I'm gonna miss that resolution because I think that there are much better books out there. I know this is something I wrote on my Twitter bio, but uh, let's see. I Thanks for reminding me of that resolution. Uh, I hope I'm able to fulfill it.
Last one from my end. Favorite running shoes. I know you talked about jogging and running a lot. Any brands or product that you're a fan of?
I like Asics. Actually, Asics, Nike, and New Balance. These three are my top brands in terms of so Asics. I think even right no not right now, but they have a Nimbus shoe. Not sure, but these three brands uh, are really nice. Not that I am like running 5K in 15 minutes, but they really help me improve my pace.
Right. So that's all on the fun section. And I think before we end this episode, I just wanted to highlight something for the audience and listeners. So in this episode, we haven't really covered the preparation part of MBA or consulting, which I'm sure, of course, Ashish would have great insights on. But we thought of covering other aspects which are not really talked about, and you would not hear him, let's say, talking about those quite often. So, But if you need help with preparation for an MBA or jobs right on campus in general, please feel free to reach out to me or any other alum who has gone through the journey more recently. But of course, that doesn't mean you cannot reach out to Ashish as well. But all of us are here to help out on those aspects as well.
Yeah, absolutely happy to help. With whatever time we have, I think we would be more than happy to help IIT Indore folks in building the career that they want.
Yeah, so I think that was all, Ashish. This brings us to finally the end of the podcast. Again, me and Shubh really thank you to take the time out to chat with us, and also I think both of us learned a lot. For me, one big thing that stood out was again it's the people around you really matter a lot, and also the decisions that you make. Um, uh, Sometimes it might be worth reverse engineering it from what you want to achieve, and then kind of making that decision out. Shubh, what about you?
I think a lot of things, but he talked about the importance of family per se and knowing when to fold your cards. It's really important at some point in your life, maybe take a step back, think of what's happening around, not just thinking of your career like as a one single goal. Maybe try to connect the dots. What is it that you want personally for yourself, your family? I think that is one big takeaway. So thank you so much, Ashish. You have been very kind and humble to answer all the questions patiently, adding more onto the questions that we might have missed. And I think there's a lot that young juniors from IIT Indore can learn from you, learn from this podcast, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Wish you the best luck for the future and hope to have a part two of this soon.
Best of luck, Shubh and Nemath. Thank you so much for setting this up. This also helped me think a lot about what really matters, because when you articulate something, you remember it better, and you realize what really matters to you is something that comes to you first. So yeah, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity, and uh, this entire idea is fantastic. I really hope that you guys are able to reach as many IT Indore folks as possible, and happy to help in general. And let's stay in touch, guys. This was super cool. Love talking to you. Great set of questions, and I had a great time last couple of hours. Thank you.